Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Tai. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really great guest today. Her name is Nita Chakrabarty, and she's a healer, a spiritual teacher, and a somatic coach, which I can't wait to dive in to see more about that. Thank you so much for being here today, Nita.
Sarah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining me today. We've already been talking a little bit pre-recording, and so I already know this is going to be such a great conversation. But why don't we start with just you sharing a little bit about you and what you do and what you offer?
How I came about my work is originally I was working in the corporate world and I really burnt out. And it was that pivotal point in my life. I had to do something about my health and I had to prioritize my health and understand, what causes burnout? Why am I'm behaving a certain way? Why am I putting all my eggs in one basket in work and not prioritizing my health and going on this journey of healing myself holistically? So I started helping and coaching in this arena of helping women from, managing their stress, managing burnout, really getting into their feminine. And now I have come more of a full circle after 12 years of like doing the inner work, the shadow work, even working with shamans and healers from all around the world with plant medicine, different modalities. I've gained all those like certifications and I came up with my own method, which is called the soul embodied method. And this is in the coaching container. I work with both men and women, high caliber leaders, come back to themselves, come back to their wholeness, really understand who are they at their authentic self, because everything else, all the modalities does is help us release all of the layers and the baggages, the emotional charges that holds us back from our truest self.
That's amazing. And I wanted to speak to a few different things you mentioned, because first of all, you are obviously, I'm sure you work with people just like you who come from that corporate burnout. So that seems to be a theme I see a lot with the guests I speak with and even guests I listen to on other podcasts where, you probably thought you checked all the boxes, right? You're like, I did the thing. I have the good job. I have, the lifestyle that we're supposed to want. And then realize it's just not what was actually like soul beneficial. It wasn't really you at your core kind of a thing. So I love that you were able to recognize that and start going on that investigative journey for yourself in order to figure out what is it, and then learning how to share that back with the world. But I really also love that you work with men as well, because I will tell you one thing I have seen with the guests I speak to on my podcast is most of them work mainly with women. And I always kind of feel like the men are getting the short end of the stick because they probably need it, not to say they need it more, but I think it needs to be talked about more in that gender, in that side, because of the patriarchy and the toxic masculinity. There's just not as much resources I've noticed for men as there is for women. So I love that you include men on this journey as well and help teach them that.
Yeah, I love that you asked that too. And you touched on that subject about the men. They are, men in a masculine energetics, they tend to be the action takers, the leaders, right? They're in providers and protectors of the feminine. So imagine, men is like the sun energy and the women are the moon energy. And like when we are physically in a gender piece, of course, we have both inner masculinity and inner femininity. But you're right, men don't have enough resources. They're like the silent community that are not getting so much notice. There's so much on our world. Of course, women have been suppressed and repressed all of these years. And now so many of us healers, spiritual guides, coaches are helping women. There's lots of women containers, lots of retreat for women. And there are some retreats for men, but they're very much in that masculine perspective in terms of, breath work, ice bath, warrior in training. And those are absolutely needed for men, no doubt. Why would a man want to work with a woman coach? And that comes back down to the somatic, that comes back down to the emotional processing. In our society, men tend to access, let's say, anger very well. And women tend to access more grief, sadness, you know. And it's interesting, in our society, women tend to be more emotional, but we're what are we calling emotional? Are we not seeing anger as an emotion? We're both emotional. We're just in a different spectrums. So it's also saying something about that, like how we're so divided as men and women. And with all of this work that I've done, with all of the work with women, and especially with the coaching program with women, they're like, "Oh my God, we need you to work with men. Can you create something for men?" So it wasn't something that I was like, "Oh, I'm going to go do this. I'm an expert in this field." It's like people were asking for it. When I was going on podcasts and YouTubes, there were men like, "Okay, so asking all these questions." So I really had to tune into myself and say, wow, like I am actually that go-to like gal pal coach for all the men that are around me, but very on a one-to-one basis. Men go to men in like a brotherhood circle, more say, and they talk about certain things. But if you ask your partners, if you ask your, let's say, brothers or guy friends, or if you see your relationship with men, who are the ones you have that closest relationship with, and who do they go to in their circle to talk about more of the deeper emotions, about the more deeper things they're going with their women, their childhood wounds? It's the women. It's really the women. Us women are the ones that are carrying all of their deepest secrets and helping them navigate it. And I was always that for the last God knows how many years, right? So it was a natural shift for me to realize like men have this, especially the ones that I work with, they're quite successful. They have it all in terms of on the paper, right? In terms of entrepreneurship, they're doing really well, or they're like high-end investors, but there's something missing. There's like this unfulfillment in their life. And it's because they may not have the right partnership, or they're going through something in their relationship that they're in already, and they haven't really connected deepest with their own emotions. They haven't processed through some of the, you know, things that happened for them in their childhood with their caregivers who were maybe not, you know, ready to have them, or in the society they were always told to do. They never had that breather to process all the things. And again, it always goes back to in the brotherhood circle, they do more of that warrior training, absolutely needed. But when you come to me, it's more about like, are you afraid of the feminine? Do you mistrust the feminine? Has in a moment in your life been a narcissist and taken advantage of you? Have you felt taken advantage of? Are you not attracting the right partner? Where are you in your life and your aspect? It's like you're not seeing certain things come to fruition, and let's talk about that. And it's usually because they haven't processed through some of the deeper emotions and life circumstances around it. So it's, you know, in the end they really get to truly get to know their authentic self, which helps all aspects of our life. And I don't think something like this truly exists. So you're right, it's, or if it does, it's very much like not so talked about.
Yeah, it is super interesting because I think men can talk to women one-on-one the way you're pointing out. I never really thought of it like that, but that's true. Like in my experiences as well, like I feel like my partner probably shares deeper, meaningful things with me that they're not going to go and share with, their guy friends because, in the patriarchy, masculinity area, it's like, well, there's this misunderstanding that feelings are weakness.
Yeah.
And then they don't have the container, as you said, to express themselves safely. So I think that they do tend to lean on women in that aspect because women have more access to that, and a lot of women are more open to being that container for them. And the thing is, when you hear about the flip side, like you said, there's a lot of empowerment for women right now from healers and coaches and all of the things, which is great. I really do feel like the divine feminine is kind of having its comeback. But in order to really help that change in that transition, I do think that the men need that resource, because otherwise, how are they going to learn a different way?
Women, they are really doing the inner work, right? And it's really encouraged for them to do the inner work. And now, men, if we want better partners, if we want better leaders in our society, they need that container and they need that safe container to trust women, because we divided ourselves and the pendulum, it keeps swinging, and now it's to come into balance. In the next upcoming years, that's the energy, is how can we bring ourselves more into balance. And this is where the masculine falls into their divine archetypes, like the archetypes of the warrior, the lover, the magician, all of these beautiful archetypes that they can really step into. They can really lead the society with the women and be that provider and the protector. And one of the key things you really mentioned was it is about like connecting deeply with their emotions, and also like like working with that mother wound, because it's usually that relationship with their mother, the moon, that sets that emotional empathy, that emotional communication, the emotional intelligence of the men. And now their father archetype, it depends on what kind of father they grew up with, also sets the tone for what kind of divine masculine they can be. And another thing that you touched on that was so beautiful is emotions are seen as weakness in our society. And it's interesting how like we're told women are emotional, and I talked about the anger versus sadness and grief. Well, so now men are scared to be labeled as being emotional, being feminine, and being in that archetype. And imagine like you're wanting to attract your divine partnership, your divine feminine partner. You want to be in your masculine, but in order to be that provider, protector, like in your divine masculine, you also have to work on strengthening your feminine. It's all within us. And hold space for the feminine, you need to hold space for your emotions, build your emotional capacity, build your nervous system capacity to hold all of the spectrums of life and the resiliency that come with it. And it doesn't make you weak, it only makes you stronger. It makes you a better partner, it makes you a better leader, it makes you a better father and a caretaker for all the both men and women around you in your community.
Yeah, 100%. That really makes me think of it. It's like what you just said. It's the balance. It's not about one or the other trumping, right? It's not about the divine feminine coming in and taking over the patriarchy or the patriarchy snuffing out the feminine. It's about that inner balance, which, like you said, we all have the feminine and the masculine within us. I think right now, going back to the divine feminine is super important. So I'm glad you mentioned that for women, because I think a lot of women have been more leaning towards that masculine because that's what society really kind of calls on us. Like if we're going to be successful, we have to play the masculine game and tap into their energy. Whereas I think a lot of us women are struggling with, well, how do we tap more into that softer feminine and still be successful? And so that's a whole other thing. So it's like on both sides, there is this huge imbalance. Like the women need more of that feminine and so do the men. And then that way we can come to this place where now we're working like together energetically. So I love that. And then from here, I just would love to ask you too, because you've touched on it a little bit as you've talked about the divine masculine and feminine and stuff like that. But I'd love for you to go more details. What exactly is somatic coaching? Let's just start there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I came into this work because I was doing a lot of mindset work in neurolinguistic programming, belief work, work of even someone like a archetype like Tony Robbins, and going into more meditation type of work to change my mind, change my belief system. And I noticed that I just felt inherently unsafe in the world. My body was holding on to, any type of like, I'm one of those people, like anything that's happening, my body reacts, right? And like inflammation, gut issues, any kind of like protection mechanism, my body like gains weight in certain areas to protect me. And it's just like a protection mechanism. So the somatic healing and the somatic coaching, what that really means is soma means the body. It's that understanding that our physiological is like so intelligent. Our body is so intelligent. That's our innate wisdom. Our body, think about this, is the what signals you to wake up? What signals you to eat? What signals you to go to bed? All of these are happening at an automatic level. You don't have to think about it. There's not much cognitive brain is involved. And that to relate it to our nervous system. So a lot of somatic coaching in this world, you'll hear like somatic coaches are trained in somatic experiencing, polyvagal theory, nervous system regulation. And now what does that mean? Nervous system is one of our oldest, most ancient tools. And in the nervous system, we work with the in somatic world is more about the autonomic nervous system, and it has the two pillars. It's a sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Sympathetic is, think of it like this, it's all active when we need energy. It's our fight and flight mode. And then the parasympathetic is when we want more rest and relaxation and digestion. In our society, we tend to be more in the fight and fight mode, which is the survival mechanism. It's like how we have grown up. So this is how our society is running. Now, imagine if you're always in that mode, and we talked about burnout earlier, that leads to, if you're always on and you're not properly resting and going into that parasympathetic nervous system, you will eventually burn out. And what happens then is, if you're always alert on and all of a sudden your body just like starts shutting off because it wants to conserve energy, your thinking brain is not going to work. Your immune system is going to be down. You're going to be more prone to catching like a cold, any kind of illnesses or viruses. Your digestion is going to stop really like working properly. So this is how you regulate your physiology. And if our body is our temple, our body is our intuition. How the nervous system works is it communicates with the entire world. It communicates internally through all the organs, your brain, your body. It works with all the organs and it signals when you're hungry, boosting your immune system, digestion, all of that. And it communicates with our environment. When we're getting our sunlight, it nourishes, going in nature. Nature is automatically like harmonious. It communicates with that. So going back to somatic coaching is understanding that you can do all the mindset work and that helps. But if there's something that hasn't shifted in your life, is because our nervous system still is like animal at first and is working like it's old time. So imagine if you're being chased by a lion in the olden days, and you're gonna run, you're gonna fight, or maybe you're gonna freeze, right? And you're making that decision in that moment in what feels safe to you. And let's say you run, you get away from the lion, then automatically your animalistic instinct is to breathe in and out, calm yourself down, and get back into the parasympathetic responder, and where you get yourself water or food, anything you need to regain your energy. And again, when you're trying to get away from the running, you don't need your cognitive brain. So your cognitive brain shuts down to spring you into action. Now, in today's society, what are those stressors? What are those lions? It's the deadlines, it's our boss. It could be even something our partner said that triggered us, and all of these woundings that we may have. And they really start at the early childhood. And that's where it goes back into what somatic therapy does, is goes back into how we were brought up in this society, what programs we picked up that are not authentically ours. What are the responses? Like, let's say you had a really critical father, you created a part within yourself that became more critical. So that part, your father, it would not hurt you so much by criticizing you, right? Or you grew up in a family, they told you that in order to succeed, you need to get good grades, go to good college, get a good job, and check off all the boxes. You picked up those beliefs, not understanding your truest self, and you try to people please and get validation from external world. So these are the things that gets programmed in our nervous system. So it's not necessarily like in our brain, like or mind, and or no amount of mindset work can truly shift all of this. If you're stuck and the emotions, anything, all of these are stuck in your body. So that's why we work with our soma, our body, our innate intelligence to release this. And a lot of the tools in this type of work will involve moving the energy and shifting the energy with your body, like breath work. There's many different types. Breath work shifts the energy in your body. It's understanding that our body has this innate intelligence, and anything that's stuck, any emotions that have not been processed is stuck in our body, our belief systems and programs. I hope, let me know if that makes sense, or let me know if you have any questions around this. That was a lot that I threw at you.
Yeah, no, that was great though. I think you did a wonderful job explaining what it is and what it benefits and how it benefits you. And, it's funny. I think that that's kind of part of getting into like the spirituality and the personal development is it's all about mindset, mindset, mindset. Everyone talks about the mindset. And I mean, that's super important. But when you're up here, like you're not in your body. And I personally only recently started realizing how important that is. And I mean, I'm still trying to find my own like routine to remind myself to get in my body because it is so easy to just be up here. But when you think about it, you have mind, body, soul. And there's a reason why all three of them are together, because the body, it's how we relate to the present. It's how we're grounded. And like you were saying, how your body will react to things around it. Mine totally does that. If something happens that really upsets me, it has reactions to it, and it's letting me know that, hey, this really bothered me, whatever it was. Or, sometimes it feels inappropriate. Sometimes I get like that lion where my body hijacks me, and then like I feel like I can't control myself because my body's in fight or flight mode, and I'm like trying to figure out how to stand my ground, but my body's like taking over and it's scared. But being
Yeah.
like, I'm guessing that when you're able to be more in touch with your body, those things start regulating out, because then your body's actually, you're getting more of that internal balance, I'm guessing. But what does that look like? So when you say it comes with movement, is it like yoga? I know you mentioned breath work a little bit. Like, what does that look like?
Absolutely. And that's a beautiful, beautiful question. When you get into this work, it's quite interesting. And I even like fell into it, obviously, like through my inner work. And you hear about talk therapy, when you keep looping yourself and going into the stories in our world, you can really re-traumatize yourself. You can't think your way out of a solution, right? You can't really think your way out of your feelings. Imagine when you're feeling anxious, like can you really rationalize it? It puts you in that thinking loop. It puts you in that loop and you get stuck. And now what is getting stuck? You're resisting emotions. And emotions, technically, they don't need more than 90 seconds, their energy and motion, to move through our body. But why do we resist emotions? Because they're bringing up some painful past. Likely, if you're experiencing heavy emotions, it always goes back to a past trigger. If you come to, we're friends, we're having a talk, and I say something, and all of a sudden you get triggered. The triggers are all about the past. And that's when you go into your body and you notice like, ooh, what's the story around this trigger? Like what's happening in my body? And you start noticing like there's heaviness in your chest, and you're getting like quite anxious, or you're feeling quite angry, and you're like, what? Why did that trigger me? What's up? And your rational brain is trying to explain it all, create stories around it, and you make it about that person. Oh, that person did this to me and that. But really, it's all about the past. And it's usually during your childhood and how you grew up around your caregivers, your parents, and the environment and societal condition, and it can even go on for generations in ancestral roots. And I won't go so much into that today. This is comes from the trauma informed world, so it could be another conversation. So what that work looks like is I do somatic parts therapy. Now these parts are created at a very young age, between 0 to 7. Our brain waves are in theta. When we're in theta, it's like a state of trance-like hypnosis. We're absorbing, we're like a sponge. We're taking in everything and we're forming our inner world. We look through a world in such a filter state, and 95% of it is driven by unconscious mind. And the unconscious mind lives in the body, connected with our nervous system. So these are the beliefs and the programs that we pick up. So when someone comes to a session, it could look like a mix of somatic parts work, which is that, I go in and I say, what are the sensations you're feeling in your body? Now let's go into the sensation and let's feel into this. And it's all is driven by to process any stuck emotions in your body. Those are the resistance and layers that's holding you back. And the main emotions are like anger, sadness, grief, guilt, shame. Shame is a big one. Shame is the one that most of my clients work with, is like belief in something is inherently wrong with us. And that forms at a very early age too, is like we're not receiving as a child the love, the connection, and the validation and the safety from our caregivers, our parents. We think something is inherently wrong with us, and we create that system. And now we go on living our life. Anytime something is happening that doesn't work out for us, we think something is inherently wrong with us. Where, like, as guilt is a different emotion. Guilt is like, something you do and you feel bad about it, right? So it's just like, ooh. And like, anger, sadness, all of those are different. So these are the different parts that we created within ourselves. And in the trauma world, what happens when something happens too soon, or it was too overwhelming for a child's world to rationalize or explain, because we're just learning at that moment, we create beliefs. They're known as limiting beliefs, the beliefs that hold us back to live our most authentic self. But I call them coping mechanism and coping strategies that we picked up very early on from a survival point of view that is no longer working for us today, because we're adults. We want to thrive. We're in a society now that we finally have the capacity and the spaciousness to think for ourselves. And this is where it comes with the somatic therapy, is getting more in your body, feeling those feelings, feeling those emotions, and in a safe space without re-traumatization, you release it. So it does incorporate, you go to yoga initially when you're developing, or you're getting into this world. And for me as well, it was when I was in India, I was in Rishikesh learning yoga, and I was in certain positions, and all I felt was like crying my eyes out. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm in a yoga class with all these people. This is like after me totally burnt out. And I'm like, why do I want to cry? Is because you're stretching certain areas of your body where the emotions were stuck. And most of the time, it's around our hips, it's our organs and our stomach. That grief is also held in our shoulders area. There's impatience and hate, this kind of held in our chest. Anger is held around our liver. Frustration is gallbladder. Kidneys is fear. All of our lower regions are like a lot of ancestral and fear based. Guilt and shame is held there. So these are the places our emotions can get stuck and stagnant over time. So definitely yoga, qigong, walking, breath work, all of these help. However, I highly recommend, if there are certain things you're really stuck in your life and you want to get unstuck, let's release the stories and the emotional baggages around it. And this is where you do the inner child work, shadow work with somatic experiencing and somatic parts work. This is where you get into the deeper inner work.
It's time to take a short break from our wonderful speaker. Are you in the need of guidance around love, career, family, life, or purpose? Embark on a spiritual journey inward with an intuitive tarot reading. Depending on what you're needing and looking for, I offer private one-on-one sessions as well as personalized email readings. It doesn't matter what the question is. A reading with me provides connection with your higher self, offering curated personal messages, or what I like to refer to as spiritual roadmaps, guiding you to the future outcome you desire. Readings are insightful and affordable. If you'd like more information or to schedule a reading with me, please see the link below.
Wow, that's all fascinating. It's funny because like and I've been noticing this recently. So I love that I had you on because somatic, exercising and stuff has been getting my attention. I haven't done it yet personally, but it's been definitely like on my radar. And I think it's because like, it's almost like I can feel this disconnect with my body. Like before, I didn't notice it. I was probably just unaware and sleepwalking, but lately I've definitely been feeling this like energetic push to be like, yeah, there's this disconnect between you and your body. And I think it's because all the things you shared, there's all sorts of emotions that haven't been, it's like I can think about it all day long,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't feel like it's getting any better. and I can totally see how during different exercises being able to release it. I haven't experienced that. The closest thing I did come to was I did try something called shamanic shakes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the weirdest experience ever. But and I did it in my own home and stuff. And it's harder to do that now because I live with my mom and my mom's here all the time, or my daughter. And I'm like, the few times I did it, I'm like, I can't have anyone around me if I try this because I'm going to look like a crazy person, or like the sounds that I make or whatever else. But I did feel like it did release something, like something kind of, there's like a weight that came off when I tried that. So I can definitely see how there's, if I were to do that more frequently or do that more intentionally, maybe how it could be super helpful to help that reconnection. And then I also find it super interesting that the liver represents anger, just because, they say that like with alcoholism, it brings out the meanness in us. And what does it affect most? The liver. So I
Mm-hmm.
never really thought about that until you mentioned that. And then I was like, oh my gosh, they say it's like the mean, makes people mean. I mean, not everyone, but that's kind of the association with it. But that is so fascinating. And thank you so much for explaining that in such detail. Do you feel like you found your purpose doing this work?
I question this myself. It's so funny that yes, I want to say yes. And there are days I still wake up and I'm like, am I doing the right thing? Am I crazy? Like, you mentioned the somatic shaking, right? And I do that on a daily basis because the more you do this work, more conscious you become. And so you start being so aware of your programming. So for me, I need to get out of that awareness. You can tell that I really love to study and do this work, and I gain so many certifications around it. But really, it's about being in your body. And even myself, I have to teach myself to be in the body. I cannot deny, like, I haven't found my purpose, but at the same time, I don't think us human beings, we're meant to live in this world like we're trying to find a purpose and a meaning out of it. The meaning is exactly what you give it. Like, if one day I realize, like, okay, I'm going to become a real estate agent, it's not going to change my core of who I am. I'm still going to help people, and I love helping people. But now I have a whole different audience to help in a whole different channeled way that I haven't before. And maybe they needed to hear my messages. And I get to work with a whole new dynamics of people I didn't have access to. So it doesn't matter about what you do. Your purpose is how you really be as a human being, how you really live your life. And it's totally attached to your core values. Like, what do you value the most? For me, I value spaciousness. And how I define spaciousness is having the freedom of having the financial freedom, having the freedom of time, having that like level of spaciousness to really enjoy my life, really have the freedom to think for myself, sovereignty, the freedom to, you know, be able to spend time with the loved ones, or I live right next to the ocean, take that my morning to myself, having the freedom to create my own schedule and do what I do that serves, like makes me feel fulfilled. So yeah, my purpose is it's just the human that I am. And you cannot escape this humanism. You cannot escape like being a human, like no matter how aware or how healed or how whatever you are, you're still a human. And we all want connection. We all want love. We all want community. The purpose is to just express your truest self. And each step of the way, and you mentioned this earlier, is how can I be more present with myself? And it's the present is to have that mind, body, spirit connection, the soul connection. And why do we do all this work? Why do we even go through all this work? Is to be present, to move through this beautiful human journey that life throws at us and for us and help us evolve as a human being. So each step of the way, like I'm a evolving human being, and my purpose, whatever it is just me being my total expressive self. And one day that means I'm a emotional hot mess and I can express and love myself through it. Heck yes, that is my purpose, you know, because it gives a permission slip to others that see me in that way. And they get to be that. And how you just said, it was so beautiful. It's like, oh, I don't feel so comfortable like just doing this shaking. They're gonna think I'm so weird. I was there, Sarah. I was 100% there in the beginning of this journey when I was like screaming, shouting, jumping, and shaking. I had to go through that period. And now, if you ask my closest friend, I'll just like go to a random space and I'll just start screaming and shouting and doing things. Of course, in a more of a polite, held back manner, depends on the situation. We use our emotional intelligence. But if I need to move and shift through something, I will do it.
I really love your definition of purpose and how you explain that so beautifully. And I 100% agree. I mean, again, so many, I say this over and over in my podcast. It's come up so many times. People think purpose means job. People think purpose means, what you do. And it's actually who you are, and who you are changes and evolves. Like you were saying, you might become something else. You might evolve into a different field of work, but that doesn't change who you are and how you show up. There's still certain dynamics that are there, like your values and your beliefs. So my definition of purpose is when you find the thing that lights you up, which obviously can change, right? Like it's not always the same thing, but it's find the thing that lights you up that you just can do, and it's so rewarding, but also it gives back in the world in some way. And that can come in so many different forms. And so I really love that definition. I love how you explain just being more in tune with yourself. And then the more in tune you are with yourself, the more you give other permission to do the same thing. And so in and of itself, even just being you unapologetically is helping other people. Because,
Exactly.
I think people don't look at it like that. They might be like, oh, you're being selfish because you're so focused on you. But it's like, well, actually, if I'm able to show up and be authentic, and other people can witness this and see that it's not as scary or impossible as they might feel it is. Now they feel like they can go on their own journey and reconnect with themselves. So it is, ultimately about how can I express myself and be myself and, just be versus what you do. So I really love that definition. And I will take that in mind, what you said about how you started off being afraid, because that's, hopefully I can, and I really should do that again, because it's been a few years since I've done the shamanic shakes. So, and I've been feeling it too. I'm always like, oh, my mom's in there, or my daughter, or maybe I'll just tell them, if you hear strange noises, don't be alarmed.
Have them join you. have them join
Oh, I'm
you.
not
Be
ready
like,
for
hey,
that.
look how fun this is, especially your daughter. Like,
Yeah, maybe
oh
her.
my God, it would be so fun. And I
Mm.
posted some of these in my Instagram recently too, so I'll share with you. I'd love for you to get your feedback on them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Maybe with my daughter, I will. I think right now I just need to release on my own and have kind of that privacy. But like my mom is very, very Christian and she's open and minded in the sense that like she doesn't quite understand what I do. I'm a tarot reader. So that's
Yeah.
my focus and gift. So she doesn't quite get it, but she supports me in the sense that she wants me to be successful and she loves me and all that stuff. But I don't think she would understand. I think she'd be like, what are you doing? But my daughter, maybe I'll introduce it to her after I get more comfortable with it with myself. But that's promising though that it's possible that even though I might feel super uncomfortable now, I could get over it and get to that other side where it's like, yeah, I know it's strange. Come join me.
Yeah, it's really like if it calls to you and you can unapologetically be yourself and come up with whatever comes in. And also, it, the deepest thing I had to look at in this work is going back to shame, is like how does shame come into play in my showing up authentically, showing up vulnerably, and knowing that whatever happens, I still accept and love myself. And one of the things, like this authenticity, that's the highest frequency. So, as you said, like purpose is who you be, right? We're human beings, not human doings. Like source, God, whatever, or our higher self, they just want us to be who we truly are in our authentic core, right? And it is that inner joyous child and whatever he or she wants to do, and that's where we need to get that connection too, to release the emotions, because we can go so deep and heavy and process these emotions, and it can get really deep, but how can we do it more pleasurefully and joyously in such a moving from pain to more of pleasure, and look at it that this gets to be fun.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That's a couple. So when I do my readings, many times when I'm, especially because a lot of what comes up in my readings is more like the blocks and the traumas and the things holding them back. Sometimes we can get a glimpse of like what their superpower is and how to reach it and what's holding them back. But I can't tell you how many times the way that I read the Page of Cups, I call this the inner child card, and it's all about being in your play, and that
Mm.
comes up a lot with shadow work and things like that. Yes, shadow work can be painful and hard, but what if it doesn't have to be? Or what if we can take a break from it and just be in our play and be in our pleasure and all of that? So I love that. And I have to say that quote, we're human beings, not human doers, or like I've never heard it put that way, but that's so true. And being able to just show up, in that joy, right? Because people chase happiness, but it's not happiness, it's the joy. And the joy is only found in the now, and so learning that it's not something you chase out there, it's something you cultivate now. And it's, big concept. I know a lot of people struggle with it. I very recently, I want to say probably in the last 2 to 3 years is when I've started understanding sort of that concept of, oh, it's not out there, it's now. But it's so hard to remember that in the now when our mind and life is happening and all of that. So I love that, coming back to we're human beings, we're here to be, we're here to be however that is, but being
Yeah.
brings you back to presence. So I love that. From here, I would love to shift to what I like to call synchronicity story time. It's like the most magical part of my podcast. They get to ask about magical things that have happened to you that, you can't explain, that just kind of either aligned perfectly or some kind of a fun paranormal story or something like that. Do you have anything up your sleeve you can share?
Yeah. I have so many. Um, hmm. One of the key point in my life when I was going through burnout and I had no idea what the heck I was going to do, and I decided to call it complete quits with the corporate world. And I was in Spain working at this yoga retreat center. And in this retreat center, I was helping with a lot of the operations, and I was working with a lot of different healers. And one day, I started having this pain in my stomach. And it was during my shift. And I was just like, it was so painful. I'm like, what is happening to me? I don't understand. Did I eat something bad? And then one of the people that came in, and one of the chefs, like, okay, Nita, you're starting to look pale. Are you okay? And I said, I don't think so. I think I'm gonna have to go. So I went back. I was in like the Sierra Mountains, is close to Langhorne, in a casita that I stayed in for that time being. And a lot of the colleagues were a little bit concerned because they always knew me as like such a hard worker, like especially coming from the corporate world. I give it my all, put all eggs in one basket. I work through when I have a cold and when I'm sick. Like I was that personality. They're like, oh my God, she must be feeling like really bad if she like had to go and rest. Like they knew my personality. So, and here I am in my casita screaming with pain. And I'm like, and I'm asking for guidance. I'm like, what's happening to me? And like, it's in the nighttime now. It's getting really late. We're in the middle of nowhere in the mountains. I barely have cell service. And one of my colleagues and a dear friend comes in the room, like, from all the way from her place just to check in on me because there's no way to get a hold of me. And I'm like screaming with pain. And she's like, we need to get her to the hospital. Hey. And I'm like, yes. And all of a sudden, like this guidance came in is like, you have appendicitis. Like, you need to get to the hospital right now. And sure enough, like we had to contact like the local emergency person from that retreat center, in the middle of the night. They took me to the local hospital, which was quite far away. And then they did the checking. They're like, she needs to get to a real hospital into surgery right away. And yep, like all of that was happening. And then I had, my appendix was about to burst. Like I got into that emergency surgery. And during that process, there was like, I had this dream. Like I was put under anesthesia and everything. And all of a sudden I was I was in the hospital. I was having a dream. And in this dream, I'm with a council of people, like council, and I just sit there in the middle of it, like looking at them, like they're like a team of people. And like, hey y'all, my life is a hot mess. What am I doing? I don't have a job. I just quit my job. I'm exploring the world and I'm learning all of these things. So where are we going with this? Like what is next? And then now I'm in like my worst situation possible. I don't even know what's going to happen to me. Am I dying? Like what's going on? And all I remember them saying was go to Peru. Go to Peru. That's all I could remember. And I'm like, what the heck? I wake up, and I'm in the hospital. I'm like, okay, I have to remember that. I have to remember that. And now the council of people, as you know, they're my higher guidances, my guides. I wasn't quite awake back then, or, spiritually really understood what was happening. And so, yeah, sure enough, like I was still recovering, but within like the next few days, something synchronistically popped up. I had an opportunity to go to Peru out of nowhere. I just like search, are there any kind of work opportunities? There was a women's retreat where they needed help. And I was like, oh my God, this retreat looks amazing. You work through all of healing your emotions. You connect. I study Tantra, so you connect with a lot of tantric traditions. You get to do cacao ceremonies. You dance and you have fun. Like, so it was like a really cool thing. But I'm like, what the heck I'm doing? Makes no rational sense. But I booked a ticket. I contacted the host. She's like, yes, you seem amazing. I want you to come. I need help. Can you help me? And also, I want you to attend my retreat. Do you want to attend these retreats? I'm like, heck yes, that's why I contacted you. And she's just like, all right, I'm here in Peru. When can you get here? I'm like, well, I need a month to recover, but I'll be there. And I followed that. And that started this whole another healing journey to that depths love spiritual. This was like a second spiritual awakening for me to really connect with my guides and connect a deeper level with myself, connecting with medicine like cacao, which is unprocessed chocolate for those of us listening, and that has its own spirit. connecting with the elements. So like, you know, when you talk about shamanism, like what are shamans? They're in the in-between worlds, connecting and communicating with different type of plants, different medicines, animals. So I got to go in the middle of all of that and got to experience it for myself and work with different people. So now I also work in plant medicine and doing integrative therapy around this area. And it's quite a part of my journey as well. And I share with my clients. So that was a big one.
That is incredible. That is an incredible story. I mean, I love like hearing backstories because usually in hindsight, there's some kind of synchronicity that led someone to where they are now. But like yours, it was like a direct, like spiritual connection of, hello, we got your attention, you know, go to Peru. And then that was like the start of where you're at now. And that's amazing. And then, see, I love synchronicities like those stories because it just gives me chills. I'm like, yes, see, magic is real, because that's a perfect example. You probably never would have found Peru if it wasn't put on your radar. It wouldn't have been put on your radar if you didn't have appendicitis and literally had to go into emergency surgery like that. You know, it was just like, because they had to get your attention.
Yeah, you know, at the time it was so catastrophic for me. I'm like, my whole construct is burning down. And can you imagine, like someone like me who came from very scientific background, corporate world, and like all of these things are happening. I'm in a whole different conscious level. I'm like, what am I doing buying a plane ticket? Like to Peru. Like, you know, what am I doing listening to a dream? And so funny in all these years, and most recently, I even came up with a dream interpretation technique. Just, you know, for people who are the message is not that clear, like mine, is like, what is your unconscious? What are your guidances trying to tell you? And it's one of the most fun way I got to develop this is because of this dream. I knew how dreams were so important.
And that's cool because I think most people, when they look at dream interpretation, they'll like Google, what does it mean when I see a white rabbit? You know, but that's just a generic. It's not going to be what it means to you. So it sounds like what you're offering is more of like, how do you figure out what it means to you?
100%. You cannot Google this. Like, because when you do that, like subconscious work or the unconscious work, your dream work is very important because anything that comes as a symbolism, like a snake, what does a snake mean to you? And now, how do you apply it? And it's like a step by step process like that. If I Google snake, like that's not going to resonate with me. Our unconscious, our higher selves, our guides are communicating in a way that we understand them. Now we need to understand what's that language, because if spirits don't speak English. I'm also in that just happened to be such a synchronistic dream that they're like, go to Peru. You have no other choice because we've been trying to get a hold of you and you're not listening to us. So here we are. But most of the time, you know, when you're dreaming, it's really important because it's just like your body and everything is processing what's happening day to day. And there's a lot of work that happens in your REM sleep. It happens during the process of rest. And it all goes back to like how mind, body, and all of this work is connected. There's no separation between the spirit and science. They are all connected. And you can see that like in my stories, like coming from that scientific world and me, you know, slowly stepping into this world. And like how you said, magic is freaking real. Here's the thing, if you come from a belief system that I'll believe it when I see it, well, it's going to be hard for you to see it. You need to believe it first.
So that's where I struggle, because it's like, I come from more of the analytical side where I definitely want to believe it. I mean, I want to see it to believe it. I've definitely had experiences that it was one of those things where it just kind of fell into my lap. I wasn't looking for it. And, you know, so that kind of almost, I mean, not in a bad way, but it does kind of make me go, well, see, that happened. So now I believe it, you know, but it's learning how to, I think that's been my biggest struggle, is learning how to like believe it now without having, you know, all the doubts and stuff. It's interesting because when I read tarot for my clients, that's like probably the only time I 100% believe. I don't question what's coming through. I just basically, I mean, half the time when I lay the cards down and I look at it, my first thought is, I don't know what any of that means. Even though like I know the cards, you know what I mean? But like at a first glance, I immediately don't judge it. I just start talking and
Yeah.
start putting it together as I go. And I just wholly trust that the higher power is there speaking through me for them. And it works every time because I believe it. I have no questions. I have no doubts. There are times where I'll put cards down and I'm like, why is that one there? And they know my logical mind will start to try and understand it, but I immediately like, nope, it's not for me to understand. It will make sense to the person. And I just keep going back to that. It'll make sense to the person. And it always does. But in my personal life, it's like, that's where I struggle. It's so funny. I could do it so well with clients before myself. I have to get into that analytical, like, well, let's do some debunking first,
And I am the exact same way. Like it seems like I have it all together, right? Like, and I'm talking about all of this is a lot of these are becoming more embodied within me still to this day. That's why, like I talk both sides is because I am also doubting sometimes. But again, like you said, like when you do some of these sessions, like you have no idea how magical my sessions become. And sometimes I'm like, wow, I could have never gone there with my logical mind because as you said, we're like this conduit, we're these channelers, and we have this inner guidances that's guiding us. And what are we doing with that? We're activating others to do the same. We're unlocking that within them.
Yeah, exactly. And that honestly, that's probably the biggest thing that helps remind me of like, okay, I have enough validation over here to know that if I were to believe in my personal life, I can see that same, you know what I mean? But it's just like, that's the inner battle of like trusting myself. And for me, I could do it for other people. Really strange. I could do it for other people, but for me.
Yeah,
but I
and
think
we're all
that's
blinders like that.
right. And I think that's just part of being human, right? We all have our own specific struggles that we're here to overcome. And mine just happens to be self-trust, one of them. So this has been such a wonderful conversation. I feel like I might even like invite you back on for later because you just seem like you're a wealth of knowledge for multiple different things and modalities. Like you mentioned plant medicine. I have not talked to anyone about plant medicine yet. So that's something I would maybe love to talk to you about in the future and have you back on to maybe focus on plant medicine. But this has really, truly been a great conversation so far. How can our listeners find you if they want to work with you?
Absolutely. The easiest way, and I definitely want to invite you as well, is to get into my world is just follow me on Instagram. I also have right now free membership where I have this beautiful community where I do breath work and healing practices once a month. And this is for everyone to join. This is something that I love to offer from my heart. And this breath work is a trauma-informed breath work practice, quite like holotropic or somatic breath work or some shamanic breath work. And I do it in a very safe container to release stuck emotions from your body. So it's quite like, when you do your shaking practice and all of a sudden you let your body just take over and release anything and you feel so much lighter and better. And why do we want to feel that? It's when we feel that stage, we can make better decisions. We can see clarity. We can see possibilities in our life. So breathwork has been a huge tool for me. It's a huge somatic tool. So it's free. I invite you all in. And then I can give you my website. You can find me at nitachakrabarty.com. And feel free to just reach out to me on Instagram. I love to have like those one-to-one discovery and connection calls. So it's all on my website. It's all on my social media.
Perfect. I will be sure to put all of that in the show notes so everyone can reach you a little bit sooner. And yeah, Nita, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing more about the somatic exercises and wisdom and all that it comes with.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you and being on your show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring. growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.